Do you know the 10 key plot points you need for your memoir? Do you know that it's as easy as 1 to 10? And I'm going to help you to do that in this video. Hello, I'm Brenda. This is Write Your Story, and I'm here today to help you to plot these 10 key points in your memoir. It is as easy as 1 to 10. But what you will need is a 3-sentence statement. And this is the third video in a trilogy of videos I have done that have brought us to this point. So if you haven't seen video 1 and 2 that will help you to understand the reliable narrator's voice and lead you to that 3-sentence statement, then I do recommend that you watch them. I've got them linked in the description below. If you have been watching them and you've come back with your 3-sentence statement, then let's dive right in. I'm going to use the statement I came up with at the end of the second video in order to illustrate this for you. And for me, it is this. I always thought that my father didn't love me. Now I see he couldn't give me what he didn't have to give. And I've come to realize that he loved me the best way he knew how. Now we're going to take those 3 statements and we're going to put them into our memoir, and we're going to put them into the 3 acts of memoir. And then we're going to look at the 10 plot points that go into these 3 acts and which plot points go into which act using this statement. How simple is that? And to show you how simple it is, I'm going to show you this. In those 3 statements, we have the 3 acts of memoir. As easy as that. I always thought that, Act 1. Now I see, Act 2. And I've come to realize, Act 3. Now let's look at how we plot 10 key points into those 3 acts. Act 1 will have 3 key plot points. Your first plot point is the hook, and it will usually be in chapter 1. In my memoir, if we're looking at my relationship with my father, it actually comes in chapter 2. Because my father doesn't actually come on the scene until chapter 2. Usually it is in chapter 1. And what you're wanting to show in this hook is something that supports your misbelief. Your very first statement, I always thought that, is your misbelief. It's something that you misbelieved about life that drove your life. And I show it in chapter 2 by showing when my father arrives at the hospital, the tension between us, the misunderstanding between us, how we don't see each other correctly. We both have misconceptions of who the other person is. And that is the hook that's going to set you up for this progression, for this journey, and for the misbelief I have about him and that he has about me. That is the hook. What is your plot point? What is the hook that supports this misbelief you have? Plot point number 2, the setup. That is now, after you've told us what the hook is, this misunderstanding, you're going to set up the scenes for us. You're going to show us how we came to this misunderstanding, how this relationship evolved, how it built up. What are all the scenes that speak to us? That is the setup that's going to lead us to plot point number 3. And that is the inciting incident. I have videos on this. Look in the links below. The inciting incident is going to be that incident that's going to propel us into Act 2, and it's going to propel us to coming to that second statement in your 3 statements. And that second statement is going to be unpacked in Act 2. And what is the inciting incident that's going to put you on that journey? For me, it was my mother's death, which meant she was removed from the triangle of my relationship with my father, and I now had to deal with him directly. And that was going to cause tension for us. What is it for you? Right, so we have 3 key plot points in Act 1. Now let's look at Act 2, which is the bigger part of our story, and it is going to have 5 plot points. The first one is to understand that you're taking us on a journey. There is a journey that's happening here. And what is that journey? So in many ways, the journey itself is actually not a plot point. It's the idea and the concept that we're going on it. But I'm making it a plot point for you so that you understand that it's an overarching plot point for your story. It's an overarching plot point for this Act 2 into Act 3. And what is the search? What is the quest? What is the journey that has been set up for us in Act 1 based on your 3 statements? And part of this is going to be obstacles. This is a plot point you need to think about, is what are the obstacles you're going to encounter as you work through this. For me, mine was the plot point of, with my mother gone, I now had to deal with my father. I had to call him, I had to interact with him, and this brought up a lot of tension in me based on the fact that we didn't know how to relate to each other, we didn't know how to communicate. It brought up all the hurt feelings I had about our relationship. It brought up all the negative feelings I had, complicated by another obstacle, my grief. So I had the grief that I was working through. I had all this drama with my father unpacking. He has his grief, he has his drama, and it's all unraveling. These are all obstacles. And in all this time, I'm operating in the misbelief that A, he doesn't love me, B, I don't need him in my life, and C, he's actually not worthy of my love. So this is a key point for you to think about. It's a plot point to think about. Now, just a little proviso here. If you look at other different plot points, there's so many other ways you can plot stories. I'm wanting to bring with you an idea of how to plot your memoir so that it's really usable, that you're not looking at some terminology going, well, what do they mean when they talk about a pinch point or they talk about another type of point? I'm wanting to help you to understand the concept of these points. Once you've got the concepts, the working with your material, and then comparing it with the more detailed types of plot points will help you to understand where you're going. But if you're just trying to work with that, you may find that you're getting stuck. I know that's how it was for me. So I'm trying to convey to you in a way that might be more useful to you. So we're going to carry on with the overarching journey plot point and then these obstacles that you need. And a good way to plot this out is to think, what are those obstacles and how did they move you along? Now in Act 2, there's another plot point you need to think about, and that is, how does this escalate? There's something that has to escalate in your story. It adds to that momentum, that urgency. The escalation was that my father's drinking got worse, I felt more alienated, and things were getting out of hand. How does your story escalate? How does your misbelief about your life, about whatever it is that you're writing about, escalates to the point that there's now going to be a midpoint in Act 2? In Act 2, there's a midpoint where there's a shift that's now going to take us to that second statement. Up until now, we're still operating under our first statement and our misbelief. And in Act 2, we've got these obstacles, we've got these challenges, everything's escalating, but then halfway through Act 2, there's this midpoint where something shifts and something changes. For me, it was the shift and the change that the way I was dealing with my father and the feelings I had towards him were not serving me any longer. And that even I, with my faith, was not feeling towards him the way I should be feeling towards him. The way I felt towards him and my faith were in direct opposition with each other, and I knew which was the right way. I just didn't want to go there because I was too hard-hearted towards him, and I actually wanted him to be punished. And so there comes this midpoint in the story where something shifts. It almost has to shift. It's involuntary almost for you because you can't keep going this way. Something has to change. And for me, it meant I had to change my perspective on my father so that my relationship with him and my faith aligned instead of being out of alignment. And so the second half of Act 2 is now, after this midpoint, after the shift, after whatever it is, we start to change our behavior. And so what is that midpoint in your memoir? where there's now a subtle shift. It doesn't mean it's black and white. It means you are still challenging, you're still evolving, you're still working through these things, but it's starting to move you differently. And you're starting to no longer just react and respond to the misbelief you've had. You're starting to shift into a different place where you're actually starting to think and act a little differently. And what is that? For me, it meant I started to have more compassion for my father. I started to understand and apply my faith in a real way that actually wasn't just words, but now turned into real choices and actions. What is it for you? Now let's recap those 5 plot points of Act 2, because I think they may have got a little lost in the description of Act 2. 1, you're going on a journey. 2, it's going to have obstacles. 3, it's all going to escalate, primarily because of your misbelief. 4, we're going to reach a midpoint where things are going to shift. And 5, you're now going to act differently. And now let's move into Act 3, which is our 3rd statement. We're going to show the journey, the progression of how we came to see this particular belief we now have, which has upended our original belief. And in Act 3, I'm going to bring you to the climax of what it looked like when I came to this realization that he actually did love me the best way he knew how. And what did that look like in our relationship? And the resolution then is, how do I live my life differently because of this new understanding that I have? And so Act 3 is very simply just those 2 plot points, climax and resolution. And there are 2 bonuses we have when we actually work with a statement like this and we show this progression. The first one is that we are the reliable narrator when we follow this progression. We have that trustworthy voice. We're not just there to turn up and be stuck on statement number 1, that my father didn't love me, and let me tell you what it has meant for my life and show you all the scenes that support that. That is a one-dimensional, stuck memoir. That's not what we want to write, and that is when we are not going to have a reliable voice. The other thing that it's going to give you when you work through a progression like this is, as we examine our lives, as we realize that there's more to the story than we originally thought, we actually will find not only that reliable voice, but we will find the natural tone of our voice, the natural cadence of our voice. We'll find the rhythm we need to write our story. We'll have all the right words. We'll have the proper scenes and events we need to record. We'll have the proper heart for them. And there is a different tone when we write, and we've actually worked through those issues. So we not only end up with a great story, we end up with the right narrator's voice and tone. I will be doing a course on this, so also reach out to me. My contact details are below if you want to be included on that course. I look forward to seeing you in that course, in the next video, or whenever else we might meet. I'll see you then.